In fact, all of the wars that took place before the conquest of Mecca were defensive.
This is Daughter of Christ. Welcome. I'm really glad you've joined me here because I'll be doing one of my favorite pastimes, deconstructing Dawah deception, to show you exactly how they practice their deception on their audience. When Dawah gangs are presented with any challenge, the Dawah deception process is a very simple 3 steps. Step 1, deny or play victim. Step 2, deflect, which is changing the direction of the conversation gradually to a different endpoint, interjecting completely random and unrelated information, hinting that Islam is actually more positive and beautiful than the audience thinks, and thereby leading to step 3, which is distracting the audience's attention from the original question that was at hand, bridging the steps in between with lies. Let's have a look at the example.
I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, for example, the warlord comment that you made.
The challenge here from Jordan Peterson was calling Mohammed a warlord. Let's see how he follows the Dawah deception steps.
Okay, about the Prophet, I think that is part of the problem. I have to be honest, because
I want to get to that.
Dr. Jordan, here's the thing, that I don't see you as some kind of enemy of Islam. I genuinely don't. I see that we need
and I don't want to be either. I have lots of people in the Islamic world who are listening to what I'm doing and watching and being supportive.
This is part of it.
Notice how Mohammed Hijab immediately jumps into playing victim, saying, quote, "I do not see you as an enemy of Islam," when this was never the issue to start with. The question was on whether or not Muhammad is a warlord, which is a legitimate question. But he changes it into making it about being an enemy to Islam. Unfortunately, Jordan Peterson falls into that trap and says that he is not an enemy to Muslims as many of them watch his material. This is a very common trap. The Dawah gangs love to guilt trip anyone who challenges Islam by accusing them of hating Muslims. They do this to protect Islam against any challenge or scrutiny, even though they've been told repeatedly that this is not the case. You can be against Islam as a religion but love the Muslim people. But sadly, Jordan Peterson swallows the bait, and the first step of playing victim was successful.
And here's what I'll say to you. No, I can tell you that as a matter of fact, like my close friends and traditionalist Muslims listen to you. I mean, that's for sure. In fact, they love your
you
stuff.
Think they'd have something better to do?
No. Because a lot of your views kind of coalesce with the Islamic viewpoints, especially on like the nuclear family, on alcohol. I know you've done your PhD on alcohol, actually, your thesis. And obviously, Islam is one of the only religions in the world that bans alcohol completely and drugs and stuff.
Notice the interjecting of completely random and unrelated information, hinting that Islam is a beautiful religion, talking about the alcohol being banned in Islam and how Jordan Peterson's thesis was on alcohol. Yeah, not very subtle. We know what you're doing. Why don't you get back to the question whether or not Muhammad was a warlord?
But going back to the point, like we said we want to build bridges and we said we want to understand each other. And I think what you said there is important. We do have 2 evangelizing religions.
Notice how he says, let's get back to the point, and then he does not get back to the point. The point was not building bridges, and it was not the evangelizing religions. The point was whether or not Muhammad was a warlord. Let's watch him move on to step 2.
We have to look at the character and the life story of the Prophet, because with the Prophet Muhammad, here's 2 things that we have to look at. Number 1, there was the Meccan period, and I'm sure you're aware in that period, the Prophet Muhammad was, first of all, he was an orphan.
The mentioning of Muhammad being an orphan is a pity play to get the emotion of the audience involved and still has nothing to do with the subject. What does being an orphan as a child have anything to do with being a warlord? It's a completely random bit of information to speak emotionally to the audience rather than directly addressing the question of Muhammad being a warlord.
And then he got married to a woman at the age of 25. Her name was Khadija. She was actually his boss. And then after that, he said that he received revelation at the age of 40 in the mountain, in the cave, sorry. And then after that, there was a time of persecution. And then after that, he went to different places. He went to Ta'if, which is a place outside of Mecca. He went to Al-Aws wal-Khazraj, who are 2 clans, 2 tribes. And what it was is that he was trying to get support for his project, or the monotheistic project, because he was being boycotted, etc. He eventually got it from Al-Aws wal-Khazraj, these 2 tribes, because they actually believed in the religion of Islam. This is documented like without a shadow of a doubt. This is what happened. And then they
And is
made
this
him,
in the Medina? Is this the Medina period that you're speaking of?
so this is actually technically the Meccan period.
Notice how the deflection worked on Jordan Peterson. Muhammad Hijab completely distracted him from the question of Muhammad being warlord or not. He derailed him enough into now asking specifics of Meccan and Medinian periods following the narrative of Muhammad Hijab. Classic Dawah gang tactics. It's been a very long time and we're still waiting. The very long and convoluted answer was exactly following the Dawah script of denying/victim playing and then deflecting to distract the audience. All we heard so far as an answer was Muhammad was an orphan, which is a pity play. He married a woman who was his boss, which was hinting at fake female empowerment. He was persecuted, boycotted, more pity play. And it ended with Aus and al-Khazraj tribes completely believing in Islam, parading an achievement for his prophet that he got them to believe. These were all random facts aimed to get the audience to either admire Muhammad or pity him, and still at the same time not directly answering the question, hoping that the audience would have forgotten at this point what the question was. Was Muhammad a warlord?
Okay, still the Meccan period.
Yeah, so right
Okay.
before Medina literally was established, because Medina is it was so called after the Prophet, because Medina just literally means the city in Arabic. It was called Yathrib before, and then they changed it into Medina to Nabi, like the city of the Prophet, and so that's why it was kind of called Medina after that. In that time period, so you got 13 years of Medina. The vast majority, I'm not going to say all, but the vast majority of wars that took place, in fact, all of the wars that took place before the conquest of Mecca were defensive.
Now that the audience is sufficiently confused with guilt trips, victim playing, deflections, distractions, and pushing and pulling on them emotionally with random facts, they are now well primed to receive a bold-faced lie.
In fact, all of the wars that took place before the conquest of Mecca were defensive.
So apparently, all the wars that took place before the conquest of Mecca were defensive. Oh, really? What if I told you that that is the exact opposite of the truth? Let's go to a Muslim site that talks about Muhammad's battles. We are going to a Muslim website, and it's in Arabic as well, just for good measure. Here, it lists the names of the battles of Muhammad in chronological order. Believe it or not, the actual term in all Muslim sources to describe the battles of Muhammad is ghazwa, the word which I've circled here. That word ghazwa literally means invasion. It comes from the word yaghzu, which means to invade. Here is Al-Ma'ani dictionary defining the word. Ghazwa is an attack, incursion, raid, or aggression. And it even cites Muhammad's military campaigns as an example, a military campaign or expedition. Obviously, an expedition is where you go out from where you are to another place. It is not defensive. So let's stay with the same site. See how many invasions of Muhammad are listed here? Notice that the same word, ghazwa, meaning invasion, is consistent throughout the list, proving that the early Muslims knew what to call it what it was. Each of those quote-unquote battles was a ghazwa, an invasion. Here it lists 23 invasions before the conquest of Mecca. 23 whole invasions.
In fact, all of the wars that took place before the conquest of Mecca were defensive.
And just for good measure, we'll take an example from that site. I'll put a link to it in the description. Ghazwat Dawmat al-Jandal, the invasion of Dawmat al-Jandal. It occurred in the 5th year after Hijrah, which is a full 3 years before the Meccan conquest. Remember what Muhammad Hijab said?
In fact, all of the wars that took place before the conquest of Mecca were defensive.
Now this one is 3 years before the conquest of Mecca. It's in the year 5 after Hijrah. The messenger went out towards the north, in the direction of Dawmat al-Jandal, which is in the region of Tabut currently, taking with him 1,000 fighters. So the tribes of Dawmat al-Jandal escaped, and one man remained, whom the Muslims took captive and they brought to Medina, and he became Muslim. And the Muslims collected great booty by the grace of Allah, the Exalted. Very defensive, yes. This concludes the Dawah deception, building up the audience to believe a bare-faced lie.